Hi, everyone. We are so lucky to be here with Ryan Wyatt, who is the head of gaming at YouTube. Now, Ryan joined YouTube when he was 27 years old, 6 years ago. Now, in the green room, we were talking about this. ARK started in 2014 as well, and most of our analysts were in their mid 20s. So, lots of DNA in common there, Ryan. Really happy to have you join us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It sounds like I'm in good company.
Yes. Well, you have done an unbelievable job at YouTube. We know that you have more than 200 million daily average users, which is phenomenal. That's from zero in the day, right? So quite a success story. And I know that you look maniacally at live gaming watch time.
It's true.
So we'd love to just get a little bit of an update on that metric since it's so important to you, and also maybe to like to get to know a little bit about what got you to this place of success, both before and after YouTube.
Yeah, looking forward to talking about it. Where do you want me to jump in first?
Well, why don't we talk about just the significance of gaming in the overall entertainment industry today? I think it's a lot more significant than most investors certainly understand. So maybe you could put that into perspective.
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually wholeheartedly agree. I mean, there's still some stigmas and cliches that exist around the industry, but I do think of this idea that gaming is some kind of like niche insider business is an outdated take at this point. I mean, if you look at like ESA's number, Entertainment Software Association, there's 2 billion gamers worldwide. We have over 160 million people playing video games in the United States. It's almost $150 billion business right across this. Now, there's a lot of different facets to that number that I think we'll be able to dive in and talk deeper about. But the industry is sizable. It's only continuing to grow. There's only more money and investments in general going into the industry overall. I think the best way that I've ever been able to kind of describe the size to people that work in traditional entertainment that don't have kind of these insights. There was a really interesting data release in 2018 that both YouTube Gaming did, which is how much people are watching gaming watch time on YouTube, and Reed did with Netflix. So we finally had this like really fun comparison, and you can poke holes in this, but it's the best kind of like apples to apples comparison that I can kind of bring up in these discussions. Netflix did 51 billion hours of watch time on their platform in 2018. This is something that they publicly stated as an end of year release in 2018. Gaming did over 50 billion hours of watch time in 2018 as well. So if you just look at this 2018 stat, and obviously we'll see what the stats are in the future, but both companies continue to grow astronomically. But in 2018, the amount of watch time that was happening on gaming video on YouTube was the same amount of watch time that happened in the entirety of Netflix. So this is a great, aspect to just see like, where is this space going? How big is this industry? And this is just talking about people that watch people play video games. So like when you get an idea of just that business, then you're like, wow, the playing base, the revenue base is sizable. And so I think there's not a better time to be talking about gaming in the direction that it's going.
Yeah, one of the things is we've studied the gaming industry that, again, as an investor, startled me and drummed up my interest dramatically. We did a study last year, and if you look at television and music and gaming, you compare them as new technologies evolve. What happened to television and music is you saw tremendous disruption and a shrinkage of the industry in terms of the dollars. But with each new technology in gaming, the industry has expanded. And that is very interesting to me as an investor. We've stayed away from music and TV, but that gaming actually should become much more dynamic as these new technologies evolve. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's this really interesting symbiotic relationship between making games, hardware for games, watching people play video games, whether it's esports, live streaming, edited upload gaming video, that this is kind of like an ecosystem where all ships continue to rise, to your point. Like, you haven't seen, people watching gaming video cannibalize people playing, right? That's actually lifted it up and has been causal to drive more people to spend on games, play more games, right? And so, to your point, if I had to go back, 5, 6 years ago and answer this question, I thought there could have been a disruption in a way that maybe did cannibalize this business, but it has been the complete opposite, where like all ships continue to rise on the development of new platforms, new hardware. Even when we look at competition in the space with gaming video, it's like Amazon's entry to the space, Facebook's entry to the space, Google's to the space, Tencent, right? Like, this has been very beneficial for everybody, truth be told. And so I do too agree with you that it is one of the fascinating things that makes the games industry pretty unique.
And I think the industry is changing very rapidly.
Yes.
Even in the last year, so many changes. Could you talk about how it's changed in the last year and how you see it changing going forward?
Yeah, there's a couple of trends, and I'll try not to be too verbose with my answer here, but I think they're very interesting, and we can kind of figure out which one we want to dive in deeper. So, a couple of things that I've been noticing in very particularly in the past year is the rise of mobile gaming and content consumption, right? So, mobile gaming has always been a really big revenue driver to that overall total games revenue number that I shared with you. But what we're starting to see are a lot more people watch people play mobile games as well. This is because hardware is hardware is getting better in phones, and games that are being developed are not inherently casual anymore. So instead of just like Candy Crush being the game that you think of with mobile games, you're starting to see these shooter battle royale games that people are playing. And so Southeast Asia, India, Latin America, and some of these places where console PC penetration isn't tremendously high, you're seeing the primary device for gaming happening on mobile devices. And so this is creating this huge appetite of kind of a new wave of gamers that are coming into the fold. And now they're watching and consuming content on the platform around mobile games. So that's like one pillar in the last 12 months that have been meaningful. You're also, on the other hand, starting to see the start of cloud gaming. Now, cloud gaming is a long-term bet. And, Cathie, I'm sure you'll want to talk about that in more detail later. So I'll kind of leave it at that. But that is like, you're basically starting to see the foundation of the house of cloud gaming start to get built in a meaningful way now. It's definitely a long-term bet. You need a lot of things to happen, from broadband capping and 5G and internet accessibility, but it opens up a whole new world of game development. It blurs the lines between watching and playing games in a newfound way. And so these are two very particular things that have happened in the last 12 months that should be on everybody's radar.
And I know that the culture of gaming has changed in recent years. Different demographics. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that as well, and maybe where you see that going.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is you're seeing now that millennials have really aged up, and they've aged up with the gaming generation, you're seeing the average age start to skew older within gaming. And the other thing that you're seeing is, and you're looking into like the young 30s, right? This millennial audience that continues to play video games, you're seeing the diversity of games be more inclusive to a broader spectrum of individuals, both age range and gender. And so you're seeing a lot more female gamers come online as well and start to have more appeal, both on the playing side and content creation side. So I think what's happening in general is this, we go back to kind of talking about the stigmas in the beginning, like this idea that it's just, a 15-year-old boys playing in their mom's basement is long gone now. And you're seeing kind of gaming be much more inclusive to a variety of individuals. As the game development, you now can see games where you identify and have interest in, right? And so this is opening up gaming to a much, much broader audience. And it's been really exciting to see. And we see it in the numbers. And like I said, just seeing the growth in our overall user base get bigger as some of these other regions come online in a meaningful way with gaming. But again, the game development is really opening up the funnel for people to age up with gaming, and also be more inclusive to female gamers and not just male gamers.
Okay. So now that we've sort of set the stage, the backdrop, how far do you think we are away from cloud streaming going mainstream? Is this going to be 10 years, 5 years? And the reason I ask the question that way is anything cloud related where you've got a lot of big players going for it at the same time,
Yep.
it tends to happen very quick, much more quickly than people anticipate. Are there real technological roadblocks, do you think, in the way, or just a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think cloud gaming, it's one of those things like you just got to put, one foot in front of the other. I think it's great that the whole industry is moving in that direction because I don't see it. Look, I think it's going to take 5 years for cloud gaming to be a material player in the games ecosystem, right? I mean, you have hardware that's easily accessible, whether it's new consoles, PCs. You have mobile gaming that's incredibly accessible to everybody, right? The Nintendo Switch that's very accessible. So I don't look at it at this thing that says we're going to move into a world where people are just cloud gaming. And I think that's not the approach or the perspective that I personally have. What I think of it as is another very complementary way to play video games, and the development of what you can do when the games are in the cloud. It really opens up games, like from a development standpoint, that are impossible to make in a world that's hardware. And I think when you fixate on like what's exciting about cloud, that's got to be the thing that people should talk about and get excited about, because when all of that stuff is being computed in the cloud, it is going to materially change the way people think about how and what they can develop from games. To give you an example, you don't have like battle royale games are 100 people. Could you do a battle royale game with 1,000 people in it because of cloud technology? You could, yes. So what does that do for a game developer when they have that tools in their toolkit, right? What does it do? Like, say you're watching me stream my video games live, right? And all of a sudden you say, just making this up, but it's like, oh, I'm gonna give Ryan $5 and I'm gonna drop him a weapon into the game, and boom, there, and immediately you can do it while playing, right? And so that's when I say it blurs those lines between watching and playing. It is going to have a level of interactivity with people creating content and people watching and playing, that loop. It's going to have a level of interactivity that is not fathomable on anything that's hardware related. So I look at it as, it's not this thing that's going to just eat hardware alive. It's going to be another thing that you can utilize and leverage to play games. And I think that's the positioning that a lot of individuals are looking at, whether it's Luna or xCloud or Stadia and so forth. But I think it's great that you got to start somewhere, right? And so, yeah, it's incredibly ambitious. It's not going to hit the ground running right now. There is 5G challenges, internet connectivity challenges, data availability in a lot of the countries, right? So like cloud gaming isn't going to be this overnight thing. And in fact, it will probably take 5 years to really establish a foothold in the market. But I'm bullish on it long term, just because I think of it opens up so many doors on the creative side that it's going to be hard to ignore once people get their hands around that technology, make games very specifically for it, which is not what you're seeing right now. You're basically seeing parody launches of hardware games on cloud gaming, and I don't think that's the exciting part. It's long term what game developers will be able to do with the tech.
So this is another example of a new technology or breakthrough that is going to increase the market size, not cannibalize anything. This
Correct.
is just another step along the way, and it could be the most important step because, as you say, of the scaling that it will enable, right?
You're seeing some like really interesting paths long-term converge as well, because it goes back to that. It's like hardware and phones are getting better, right? So like displays, devices, they're getting cheaper, right? That's a path that's happening over the next 5 years, will continue to happen. You're seeing 5G accessibility start to happen. And so you'll have a phone that you might tap into a cloud game, or you might sideload like games right off the hardware of it, right? And I think it will be optionality of it. And that, to your point, it's going to be incremental. I think this idea that cloud gaming is going to be this substantial thing that cannibalizes console or hardware is not the right take. It wasn't the right take when people had the PC console argument. It hasn't happened with mobile gaming devices have become more, prominent in people playing gaming, right? So I agree that it is another thing where all ships rise in this stage, right? Because I look at cloud gaming will be really helpful to YouTube gaming's growth. But mobile gaming and hardware and all the consoles and PC gaming will continue as well, because you're always going to have gamers that are going to want to be on the forefront of hardware, and you're always going to have gamers that are going to want ease and accessibility, and you're always going to want gamers that are going to want to try new games, and some of that might happen in cloud, right? So it's I think it's really exciting, and it's going to keep moving that industry forward. It's going to make it bigger. It's going to make gaming more inclusive to more people.
And it's probably going to change faster. And it's already
Yes.
been changing pretty quickly. So I think many investors are shocked to learn that the sale of virtual goods has generated revenue of about $130 billion around the world today. I mean, some people don't even understand what that is, you
Yeah.
know? And I'm talking about investors who probably have dismissed gaming as a niche area that's going to be cannibalized and so forth. But 130 billion, and we think it is going to more than double over 5 years. So it'll grow faster than 20% at a compound annual rate. But what you just said about cloud suggests to me that might be uh, too low of an estimate.
Yeah, time will tell. I definitely agree with you as far as the accelerated growth rate and overall as you're starting to add some of these things on. And the I chuckled at the digital goods thing because I have spent so much money on games coined free to play solely on cosmetic items or maybe a better weapon or a better item, right? And so I actually believe long term the games that are going to be the best for YouTube, the best for revenue generating are kind of these I call them like games as a service, if you will, right? So think of like Minecraft, Fortnite, Roblox, right? Even games like Grand Theft Auto that have these like really tremendous narratives, but they have this open world where you play, iterate, downloadable content that you pay for to keep it fresh. These are the games that really are going have already changed this industry and are going to continue to change the industry. That's not to say these AAA titles aren't great too. Call of Duty was released today. I'm sure they're going to do phenomenal, right? Like a lot of people were really excited for it. But I look at a game like Minecraft. Minecraft came out in 2009. It was an indie game, right? And you have that whole narrative, you have that whole storyline where, Microsoft acquires it and it's become this like multi-billion-dollar property. It has its entire time been the number one game on YouTube. And at no point has it ever been dethroned, even in Fortnite's heyday, right? So this idea where you can have these open world games, you iterate on them, you allow people to buy digital goods, digital assets, new content, and you keep releasing that, you keep improving on it. There's a huge appetite for people in that game category, right? And you might have somebody that steps away for 3 years from that game, and a new content pack comes out or something's released, and it draws them back in. And so when I look at our top games on YouTube, it's Minecraft, it's Fortnite, it's League of Legends, and which is like its own kind of thing on the MOBA side. But it's some of these platforms that they're like, we're going to launch a game, we're going to keep iterating on it, we're going to keep selling you digital goods, selling you expansions, and you love the game so much, you're going to continue to invest in it instead of going and buying a wide variety of games. It's a little long-winded answer, but that's why I think the conversation around iterating and updating content within games and digital goods within games is a really, really important conversation to be having.
Right. And again, it diffuses another misperception, I think, that is out there in the investment community, which is, hey, this is just a hit driven model. It's and it's anything but, especially given the examples you just gave us.
Yeah, and that's
So,
an old take as well. That's why I think it is good we're having these conversations, because they need updated, right? I think
absolutely.
6 years ago you could definitely argue it's a hits driven business. It's like X publisher launches X AAA game and it's rinse and repeat, right? And that model has changed drastically over the last 5 or 6 years.
Absolutely. So now, what about esports? Why why isn't it really taking off? It is in some way, of course. It's
Yep.
the largest, but what is your take on esports, and what, if anything, is holding it back from mass market adoption?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this. When I was in college, I was an esports commentator, so I played competitively. So like esports is very near and dear to my heart. Look, I think it is growing astronomically. Esports is 10% of watch time that's happening in the games industry overall. When you look at all the platforms, right? So it's moving, right? And you see a lot of different games hitting new records of peak concurrency. I mean, I laughed the other day. I saw Garena Free Fire which is a mobile game only, hit 1 million concurrent live stream viewers in Portuguese speaking only Brazil stream, right? Mobile gaming esports. It's like, this is unheard of, right? You saw League of Legends just did Worlds and they hit record breaking numbers across the board. They released those. The NFL has started 100 years ago, right? So, like, I think people have unrealistic expectations that esports should be in line immediately with traditional sports today. At the rate that traditional sports is growing and at the rate esports is growing, I think a very sane, pragmatic, reasonable person would argue fairly that esports will be in line with traditional sports viewership in 10 years. No doubt. I think a lot of what's happening is esports growth has really gotten there. Brands don't know if they're buying Major League Baseball or the Little League World Series. So there's a lot of brand education that needs to happen. I think we use esports as such a blanket term, but that's like talking about sports but not recognizing the nuance between cricket and MLB and golf and NBA, right? And wrestling and boxing, right? So that's how you have to look at these games. These games have different backgrounds. They are different styles. They appeal to different people, right? They appeal to different people in different regions too, right? Where like you see MOBAs be really big in Southeast Asia and you see, you know, competitive shooters or tactical shooters be really big in Europe and North America, right? So I think a lot of it will be evangelizing and educating over the next couple of years so brands get comfortable and excited. That'll inject more capital in the space. I think a lot of these game publishers have done a fantastic job of bringing in traditional sports talent to work with the esports leagues, right? So if you look at Tony that just came over from MLB over to Activision Blizzard to kind of run their esports operations, and one of their chief revenue officers' backgrounds in the NBA. And so what you're starting to see is this really nice mix of deep endemic gaming knowledge mixed with traditional sports. And so I think it's inevitable, to be honest with you, especially when you look at the size of gamers and the interest in that content.
Yeah, I think that's another hockey stick in the future. I really
Yes.
do. Yeah. Now, what about the impact of game engines like Unity and Unreal Networks? How is that impacting your ecosystem? And actually, many investors don't even know what that is. This is
Yep.
a fairly recent development. So maybe you could talk about first explain it, and then how you see it helping to evolve your ecosystem.
Yeah. So the best way I would describe game engines is like what Microsoft Word is to an author, what Excel is to a finance manager, what Photoshop is to a photographer, right? It's their tool they use to develop the piece of work that they're going to produce, right? So these game engines allow particularly companies and individuals that don't have their own proprietary game engines, which some companies do, right? They make their own game engines. These are basically how you make a video game from scratch, the assets that live in it, how you build, how you develop them. Unity does a great job with VR, mobile games. Unreal, which is owned by Epic, really allows you to tap into, and Fortnite's a great example of how that engine's used, but people make a variety of games on it. And what it has effectively done is democratize the ability for anybody to make video games. If you want to make a video game, there's zero excuse, right? You have the tools at your disposal. It's like downloading and paying for Photoshop, right? And that's kind of if you're a game developer. So I think those are really important assets, and you are seeing the bigger industries develop game engines, and those are going to continue to, you know, iterate and evolve. But they're very important pieces and tools in the developer's tool belt.
So you think this is another accelerator then?
Yeah, I think the beauty about these game engines is again, it's the ability to let anybody develop a video game, and that is again good for the space, because what can happen is Minecraft started as an indie, right? Look at what is happening with Among Us, right? Indie game developed, right? Kind of sat nowhere for a couple years and then blew up, right? Creator ecosystem, everybody's playing this game, and so there are great success stories that come out of the ability to democratize game development. And so I love what these two companies are doing, and they're definitely companies to keep your eye on as they continue down that path. They do great things for this industry.
Right. And that will become even more important in terms of cloud streaming, right?
Yeah, I think like I don't know necessarily that it's you know, they'll have to consider development on cloud technology long term and what those engines do or don't do and how they play a part in that, which they obviously will play a part in it. But I think it's more like how I look at them is it's just more the games industry continuing to grow, and they're big players in that because of their ability to develop games and what they've done in the past as well, right? People have leveraged these engines for a while now, and they'll continue to do so in the future. But I also believe there will be a lot of continued work in the proprietary game engine field by a lot of companies that will allow them to, uniquely and distinctly separate themselves from their peers.
Okay. Now, what do you think? We've talked about some misperceptions. What are there any others that you think the gaming industry suffers from?
I think a lot of it now is, people are starting to recognize that the space is really big. It's a huge revenue driver. It's the biggest revenue driver in all of entertainment, right? So I think people are starting to recognize, in Hollywood and music industry that the games industry is much bigger. And the argument used to be this games are $59.99, but now as you go to this free to play model and digital spends, I think those arguments aren't holding water anymore, and there's appreciation that the size is real and it's something that needs acknowledged. I think what people are starting to learn now is the game watching element, right? Like, wait, I think it's really hard for people to fathom that the size of people that watch other people play video games. And even I, as the head of gaming at YouTube, struggled with this concept, 7 or 8 years ago, because I hated watching my brother play video games growing up. Like I was like, couldn't wait for him to die, so it was my time to play. And so I think that's the next one. Like, people get esports because it's like, all right, traditional sports, you're watching this kind of competition tournament format for a prize. That's pretty digestible to most people, to at least at a high level understand that conceptually. But this idea that there are hundreds and hundreds of millions of people that are logged into YouTube that are coming in every single day to watch gaming video, I think is new. And I think that's one where there's still not enough appreciation about the size and scale, which is kind of why I let off the Q&A with that little Netflix tidbit.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's, I know we've done a lot in terms of the future. And of course, as investors, we're trying to think about the future. 5 years from now, what do the popular games look like? And, are there any other technological breakthroughs that will serve to, again, gaming is already one of the largest entertainment vertical, and new technologies will continue to build on old ones to leverage that. So what do the popular games look like in your view? And any other thoughts you have on where technology is taking us?
Yeah, there's a couple things that I think are really interesting that will happen over the next 5 years. One, we look at the live streaming space, right? Which I think is really interesting. When we look at all gaming watch time on all platforms outside of China, right? And we look at all of the gaming watch time that's happening, across video content, it's 17%, right? So VOD is going to always be the substantial driver of gaming watch time, but live streaming has always been very exciting because it unlocks this different content format that tells a different story that can only be told in live. And from a creator's perspective, it's very interesting because it provides a level of interactivity with the users that are participating in real time. As I see this world of these lines blurring, and when I say like blurring between watching and playing, is that like you might be watching gaming video and playing at the same time. You might be able to change the dynamics of a game that I'm playing while watching me, right? And so I think these lines will continue to blur. And because of that, I feel live streaming is really important. I think people over-index on the conversation of it relative to its size. I mean, it's like I said, it's substantially smaller than VOD upload content, but it is a very interesting space long-term for these reasons. And so YouTube is heavily invested in this space, live streaming overall, right? YouTube is, but really particularly what we're doing in gaming. And that's continuing to be a focal point and something to look out for, because I do think it will impact, to your initial question, what do game development and what does success in games development look like? I think if you don't have a gaming video strategy as part of your game development strategy, you will not have substantial success in generating these kind of Minecraft, Fortnite-esque numbers, right? I think there needs to be an appreciation of the creator ecosystem, the users that watch and play, and how you build that as part of the development process. And you're seeing a lot more publishers do this. That will continue to happen that direction. But those are things that I would want to check off and say, okay, they're doing these things. They're mindful of the creator ecosystem, the viewer ecosystem, as well as the game player, and how these things all operate with each other. I think it's really important. Two, where I see games going more specifically is kind of going back to that, what I call like games as a service. I think you are going to see this model. It's a little scary, especially when you're launching them in a free to play model. You know, you put all of these years and all of this money and investment and hard work into it, and you hope that it pays off when this game comes out and is free to everybody. It is a, it's, you know, it's kind of like leap and the net will appear type of investment, but it's really where the industry, I think, is going in a meaningful way. There's a game that just came out called Genshin Impact, right? It's a mobile gaming first free to play, and it's having this huge impact on revenue, and people are buying left and right. And so you're going to see games be bigger, more open world, more inclusive, available on all devices, right? Because there's this appreciation that gamers are playing everywhere. So I want to play on my PC. You know, after this, I go jump on my mobile device and can play that same game. So I think cross-platform is really important. I think games as a service, where they're iterating and constantly providing fresh content to the user, whether it's updates to the story, whether it's digital good items. These are the games that you're going to see that are really going to succeed. And I say that they're really going to succeed, not absent of AAA, but I say they're going to succeed because they are going to be so big to the Twitch, the Facebook gaming, the YouTube gaming platforms. And I think those are going to be really important anchors long-term in the games industry.
Yeah. And this is the last question. You know, they're becoming social networks, of course. Right. And, you know, when I saw in Fortnite, the Party Royale Island, I was saying, whoa, could this really evolve into a social network in a way that no one's thinking about right now?
I think it's a great observation, and look at what they've done. They are building these fun communities, sub-communities within there. I mean, people are going to watch anything from the new Star Wars trailer to a concert. And, you know, you look at that Fortnite, they did the Travis Scott event. Yeah. They published how many people were actually in the game playing. The numbers of people watching, like if you looked at it, you know, there was 6 to 7 million concurrent live viewers watching creators stream that event, right? So this was one of the biggest entertainment launches in history, right? Based off of people watching, people participating, and the conversation it generated. And it honestly missed some people's radar, which is astonishing. Like you don't get bigger than these moments, right? So yeah, we'll see. I think those moments need to continue to happen to catch people's attention. And I'm looking forward to YouTube being the one that generates those moments.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Ryan. You have provided us and with so many insights that I don't think we would have had otherwise. And we will wish you every success. You're in such a burgeoning space. You're doing such a great job. And we just thank you for sharing your insights with us.
Yeah, thanks, Cathie. Thanks for having me on. Have a good rest of the summit, and we'll keep in touch on the games industry.